I'm Jeremiah Owyang, one of the partners at Altimeter Group. We're a research firm. I used to be an analyst at Forrester Research. So I talk to a lot of smart folks, like all of you guys, to find out what's happening in this space and publish reports. And I'm very excited to come present today what we call is how to scale social business. So let's see a show of hands. How many of you use social media in your personal lives? Okay, nobody? Nobody. How many of you are using it at work now today? Okay? Okay, a lot of folks, so just about everybody. And how many of you, this is your core function at your corporation? This is your primary job. Okay, so about half of the hands. Really good group of folks here. And what I wanted to do is share what we're seeing in the marketplace when it comes to scaling social. Now, many companies jump in and do social, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to get ahead of the demands. I'm going to tell you some stories about what's happening and how companies are going to leverage it. In the end state, the goal here is that you do very little work. That's right. If you do social business right and it scales, your customers and your colleagues are doing your job for you. And that's kind of the state that we want to see that you get to. So let's take a look. Well, the world is changing. More technologies are coming. You think social is disruptive. Augmented reality with Google Glass is going to roll out in the next few weeks. It's already starting to roll out. 3D printing. People can create products on demand. That's starting to emerge. The collaborative and sharing economy, which I'll talk about at the end, my next research project, is already, well, it's been part of the Copenhagen society, but now it's spreading to the rest of the world. These new technologies are emerging at a faster pace. So we have to be prepared to build scalable programs from the inside out. Now, this is us. The world is changing. And it means that inside of our organizations, we have to move our corporations. When I was trying to run social business at Hitachi, before I was an analyst, there was a lot of internal things I had to change. Some things went well, some things didn't go well. And it requires that all of us act like open leaders. And open leaders are individuals that are trying to make a change when we've lost control. And I like to quote my colleague, Charlene Lee, who says, how do you maintain command when you've lost control? How do you maintain command when you've lost control? And social business is that. It means whoever uses these tools has the control. And often, that's our customers, our employees, our partners, and potentially our competitors. So it means that we also have to use these tools and technologies to make sure that we have that command when we've lost that control. Now, one of the challenges we found during this research, and we interviewed over 50 different social strategists from around the world, is that there's a lot of internal struggles. In fact, the internal struggles are perhaps greater than the external ones. I see some heads nodding. Trying to convince executives, trying to measure ROI, trying to roll out education programs, trying to deal with our younger generation that thinks it's okay to publish Friday night photos on the corporate homepage, on Facebook accounts. Or the proliferation of accounts. It's so easy to open a social media account, but has the company really thought about what it means? Now, we actually see that these demands are compounding. I distinctly recall one interview during the research where one person said, Jeremiah, I have to stop the call. I can't finish the interview. Why? Well, there's somebody standing outside of my office, and they demand that I turn on a Facebook page for their campaign on Monday. And if they don't do it, they said that their niece will do it on Sunday for them. I said, yeah, you better go. Now, this graph here represents the amount of tweets that are happening around the world. And if you watch some of these diagrams, there's a number of analytics tools out there. This one is called TweetPing. And you can actually see all the tweets that are flowing around the world. You can see them move across the hemisphere. And it's just showing, and the countries are starting to light up more and more and more. And soon it's going to be as vibrant as flying over at night, the amount of digital content created. So it's only increasing. And when you look at the adoption rates of social, it's only going up and to the right. So what do? We talked about the world is changing. We have no choice but to be a leader. we have no choice but to make a change. But it's hard to do internally, and we see that these demands are going to compound. If you're not sitting on the edge of your seat wondering what to do, you're in for a wild ride. And what we found is there's only two paths companies can take. The first path, and this is the one we don't want to go down, is called you are grounded to social media sanitation. And this is when you cannot scale. I'll describe what that looks like. The second path, and I know we're all going to go on this journey, everybody's here at Community Conference, is what we call escape velocity, when you scale. And escape velocity means to go faster than gravity, and you escape that pool. So let's first describe the two paths. The first one is grounded to social media sanitation. It looks like this. You think you're in charge of your program. You think you're flying, but you're just grounded. You're not moving. And what does it look like? Let me describe what it sounds like. The diagnosis is we've asked a number of corporations in our research, how many of you are being proactive and reactive? And we found that 41% of companies are being reactive. They're not even catching up. So it means over a third of this room, perhaps this section here or this section here, is already falling behind. You're not able to respond. And these are from enterprise class corporations, typically large companies, global national as well. Now, we found that companies in our research have been around 2 or 3 years, so these are still very early programs, yet they're still behind. We segment the data, look at this, and we measure it multiple times. So we have data sets from 2010 to 2012. By the way, you'll have access to all these slides and all of our research reports. And we found that the average company has been doing this for about 3 years, and they have a different set of program. Let me explain what the program looks like inside. Spending is very small, and even though that these teams have been around for 3 years and they're falling behind, and we can segment this on the top, the different bubbles represent the size of the revenue of the corporation which we survey in our research. On the first row, you can see the number of folks involved, and it's a full-time position. Now, keep in mind, your team size is probably not that big, but it can also involve customer care and customer support. So look, 100 million to 250 million, this is US dollars. 6, 7, and then large companies have teams of up to 20 people. And that could be multiple different teams within the company. But even with that, those tend to be over 100,000 person companies. And still, it's a very small group of people that are trying to manage these programs. We also look at budgets. They tend to run very small. And you know what? I'm actually thinking that is okay for our industry. Because the goal is if you do scale, is you do a lot with very little. And tap into your crowd. So the research shows that although organizations have been doing this for some time, they have a relatively small group, even if it's cross-functional within the company, budgets are pretty limited, and they're unable to scale. So what does social media sanitation sound like beyond the research data? Well, it seems so natural for companies to respond to customers and social channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, right? If we see a customer yelling, what's the most instinctual thing we do? We talk to them, right? We are taught to engage for the last few years. We're taught to go and be part of that dialogue. Well, I wanted to share that that is actually a potentially dangerous strategy to do. Why? Because we might be teaching our customers to use social channels to yell at us in public in front of their friends. I'll say that one more time. Responding to customers without a strategy is potentially dangerous because we're teaching our customers to yell at us in public. Now, you're probably saying, Jeremiah, but they were yelling at us first before we got there. Yes. But the goal here is to think about a bigger strategy, one that will help you scale. The second thing that social media sanitation sounds like is social media is spreading throughout your company. And we've already talked about that example of that one person who said, I want my Facebook page by Monday, or my niece will turn it on. There are very low barriers. There are no barriers, pretty much, to turn on these pages. Yet when we do research with a number of our clients, brand clients, we find that about 2/3 of the accounts on average are either abandoned, being spammed, or not very effective. Only about a third of them are actually active and healthy. So many companies and departments turn these on, but they're really not nurturing or taking care of them. The third one is we don't have a lot of resources. We can't do too much. So it means that with limited resources, social as we know it cannot scale. We can never hire enough talented community managers to keep up with the number of customers that are going to use social. And that's a great problem. We always want to have more customers and employees, right? But we cannot hire enough community managers. Scaling is going to be a challenge. So, the path that we want to avoid is social media sanitation. And hopefully, we've seen now that we cannot scale in this path. So instead, what I want to do is focus the rest of our time is the second path, the path we will all take on achieving escape velocity. And this is how to scale. And the good news is we're at the right conference because community is a big part of making this happen. I'm very excited to share 6, and there's many others, 6 things that we see that advanced companies are doing to scale social business. I presented this deck at Dreamforce and a number of other conferences around the industry, and these are things that we're hearing from the industry. I'm talking to smart people like you. And I'm going to walk through each of these 6 and show you examples, sometimes data, and how you can make this actionable. And you can take this away as this is the theme for the conference on how you can scale community. The first one we'll look at is get your company in a formalized situation first. Start from within. 2 is then you enable your company, your business units, to do it on their own within certain parameters. 3 is use the right tools and streamline and take account of all the social media assets that you have. 4, now you can go to market and you want to tap into your peer-based communities. A small subset will become advocates. Not all your customers will. And we're seeing some formalized programs turning your customers into an unpaid army. And then finally, number 6 is how to integrate. And we're seeing this happen in a number of different ways. Are you ready to scale? Yes. All right. Number 1, get into a scalable formation. Now, I just love the opportunity I had to work on these diagrams. And these represent the different organizational models that companies are in when it comes to social business. Sometimes people come up to me at conferences, they go, hey, Jeremiah, thank you. I'm a honeycomb. Hey, I'm a dandelion. I'm a hub and spoke. So if we meet today, I'd love to hear from you on what organizational model that you think your company is in. Well, maybe we should poll the room and find out. What do you think, Anders?
Go ahead.
Let's do it. Okay, so we'll walk through each 5 models. And at the end, I'll ask you to raise your hand on which model you think that your organization is. And there's no right or wrong, but each one has their upsides and downsides. Then I'll show you the global industry data on where we see the market today. And we'll also look back at 2010 as well. All right, ready? So the first one is called decentralized. And decentralized is when anybody in the company can create a social media account at any given time and say anything that they want. It's very unstructured. Kind of reminds me of Freetown, Christiana. Anybody can do anything they want. Few parameters. So decentralized. The second one is called centralized. And we tend to see this in a lot of regulated companies, pharmaceutical, finance. And there's one department that's doing social on behalf of the rest of the organization. They might become the spokesperson and the voice running all of the channels. So they represent it. Now, the good news with this one is you have a lot of control. But the downside is it looks like you have a lot of control. So it may not come across as authentic. Each model has its ups and downs. The third one is called coordinated or hub and spoke. And this is when we see a cross-functional team come together. And this group is deploying social on behalf of the other business units. Hub and spoke. That's a key word, behalf. The next model is called dandelion. And dandelion is when you enable the business units, or also called spokes, hub and spokes, to actually deploy the programs on their own. But there's still a centralized body of governance, training, or some roles, or some software or services towards the center. So that's Dandelion. Ready for the last one? This one we only found like later in the market. This one is called Honeycomb, or Holistic. And this is when everybody in the organization, and this means anybody who wants to, 30%, 40% of your workforce, 60%, 80% of your workforce, 100% of your workforce, is using social in a safe and consistent and organized way because they've done proper training. So let's do a show of hands on which organization that you are. So the first one is called decentralized. And again, there's no right or wrong. We'll just learn from each other. How many are in a decentralized model, your organization today? Okay, about 10 hands. Thank you. Next is centralized. How many of you think you're in centralized? Okay, a lot more. More about 20, 25 hands and a whole bunch of giggles. That's a funny one, apparently. Okay, how about this? Hub and spoke coordinated. Actually, fewer hands, about 15 hands. Okay, so it's about tied. It's actually about tied. How about dandelion? Who's in dandelion? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. Also about the same amount. So it's been low with decentralized, and then about 15 to 20 across all these three. Then how many are in holistic or honeycomb? One hand. Okay. Good. Thank you. So it means this crowd is we're going through some maturity. I didn't see a lot of hand raises, so a lot of folks may not know which model they're in, or don't quite understand exactly how they could fit, or are moving between models, and that's actually very common as well. So thank you for participating. Let's see where the industry is at today. Now, there's two sets of numbers, and these are all percentages. The top number is 2010, our pool, a survey pool, and then 2012 is the one we just did this last quarter. And again, these are global national companies, large corporations, global nationals often. Now, it's more important to focus on the orange numbers because that's where we are today in the market. And where we're seeing the dominant structure right now is in centralized, in hub and spoke, over a third of the market. Then we saw centralized, about 30%. And then hub and spoke is less than a quarter. But what we're seeing year to year now, take a look at the blue numbers. I see a lot of cameras going up. That's great. Multiple hub and spoke is moving up. So it's starting to fetter outside and go inside of the organization. And we're seeing decentralized slowly decrease. Our prediction is decentralized will go away because companies can't scale. That is a form of sanitation, can't scale. We also believe that centralized cannot scale because remember, one-to-one, you can't last forever. You have to get your crowd to do it. So we're seeing the market move to multiple hub and spoke. We will talk about how do you actually do that. I'm sorry, was there a question? Okay. So how do you do that? And we'll talk about what a center of excellence looks like and how companies move into that model, the scalable model. So I've showed you the data. The market is moving into Dandelion, and that is a scalable model, and we will head there. Now, let's talk about enabling your business units. So now that we've identified what are the org models, let's talk about what it takes to make that happen. And again, the word enable is a key word. It means that you're helping and teaching others, your colleagues around you, to do social business safely and to scale and be consistent. One of the trends that we're seeing is a group or a function or a program called a Center of Excellence. Anybody here have a program called that term or something very similar? There's a few hands. What are the names of your programs? Shout it out. I want to hear it.
Digital Competence Center.
Digital what?
Competence.
Digital Competence Center. Thank you. Any others?
Social Media.
Social Media Hub. A third? Anders, what are you seeing with your clients? Anything?
Moving there.
Moving there? Okay. Now, Center of Excellence is an interesting phrase. And when I interviewed the strategists at some of these leading companies, I said, why did you choose that name? And they said, oh, Jeremiah, it's very simple. We're trying to get the organization to work with our coordinated group, our hub. And we chose that name, Center of Excellence, because it means if you're not with us, you're not excellent. So it's a little bit of internal PR to get people on board. If you're not with us, you're not excellent. Now, Center of Excellence have 6 different components. There's more forming. We see more things added. And to the gentleman who said that digital Center of Excellence, digital competencies, that is absolutely right. We're seeing in the next year or two, social media teams are moving to digital teams. That is the next trend that we might see here at Community Conference in the next 2 years. So, the first thing that the group does is establish a high-level strategy, defines a vision for the corporation. Over to the right, they also provide training and education programs. And this means to employees, executives, and to all associates. By the way, if it means associates should not use social for work purposes, you have to educate them on that. Everybody must be educated. Number 3 is the right policies, research programs, setting in place measurement goals, and then selecting the right vendors and our agency partners that are going to work with us. So this group has this charter, the Center of Excellence. Now, how does the Center of Excellence work with the business units or business groups or divisions or departments? Use any term you want. They provide all those things I just mentioned on the left, but also on the right side, they have an agreement. They have an agreement with the business units that they agree to use these tools within the established guidelines that we set. And 2, they bring that data back to the group so you can report it up to executives. And the third one that we've seen this agreement is you share and teach other business units around you. So for those of you that are, and it's pretty much everybody in this room, that are setting up social media programs, build this contract. If you want access to our research and our policies and our training and our education and all the service providers we have, you have to agree to working well with others, teaching folks, and making sure we have all the data. So you can set that contract so your whole organization can be part of this excellent center. Let's bring it to life. We see a few examples. This one was early on in the market, and this is a public slide share, and this is eBay's model. Now, disclosure, they're a client, but they built this before we started to get involved. And they used the term, actually, in that square box, eBay Social Media Center of Excellence. Adobe, HP, Cisco, a lot of the tech companies in Silicon Valley often are first to adopt. They use that specific phrase. And you can see around the sides, on the gray, the different regions. The blue is the different functions, and green is the different product units. And those are the spokes. Looks like a multiple hub and spoke, right? It absolutely is. They work across the entire organization. I was pleased to recently learn that KLM uses the same type of form, and this is called the Social Media Hub. Is anybody here from KLM? In the back. We look forward to you sharing with us later. And a dedicated team is sharing their expertise from communications, e-commerce, customer care, and across even in the flight crews. And they have a number of tools, Radiant 6 and Salesforce, which they're using to manage all these things together. He's taking a picture, send it back to headquarters. I'll smile for you. You got it, good. So the first phase is getting your company in the right organizational model. 2 is enabling the business units by that center of excellence. And this order is specific. This is a pragmatic order for you to follow. Get your internal things ready first. Number 3 is using, finally, the right tools. And what we found is most companies don't have a great sense of inventory of the amount of tools that they have. So here's a stat for you. We recently polled the market, and we asked large corporations, how many social media accounts do you have for business? Do you know the number? The number is always shocking to people. It's 178. 178 is the average number of social media accounts a business has for work purposes. Now, the reason it's shocking is one group of people say, wow, that's a lot. Then the other group would say, that's it? The second group tends to be retail and CPG, who have thousands of accounts, potentially in the tens of thousands. Or conservative companies only have a few dozen accounts. So there's a wide variety. So 178 is the global average of the number of social media accounts that companies have. Now, to manage these, there's a set of technologies and tools which we have called social media management systems. One of our sponsors, Falcon Social today, is one of those technology providers. There's a number of other providers out there. We've conducted research on the space. And these tools enable you to manage all of these tools, all of these accounts, governance and workflow, and will help your organization to use them. Our vision is in the future that every employee will be issued a social media account along with their email and their badge. That'll be a standard form of communication. For example, Coca-Cola has 500 brands across the world. Each brand has its own country marketing, and then there's at least 10 different social media types, and then times each campaign. 500 times 150 times 10 times campaigns. That's the number of potential social media accounts that they could have to manage. You can't do that manually, especially if employees, they take the password with them as they leave. You can't do that. Even large corporations like Microsoft can't even take into account the actual accounts they have. This is an official page on their website. Take a look. And the text reads, if anybody has a list of other accounts, please let us know. They don't even know because it's such a big corporation. How can you keep track? Let's move on. So the fourth one is called scaling with peer-to-peer communities. And now we're tapping into the crowd around us. You'll get to hear from Rachel Happy, one of my colleagues from, American colleagues, from the Community Roundtable on how communities are a way to scale your organization. And we're seeing a number of companies tap into their customers to do your job for you. And that's really the goal, is enable your customers to be part of your company, a virtual part of your organization. TomTom has an online community, and they tap into them to actually do customer care and to understand about new types of products. And they have measured, they have 150K in savings as the community in 1 month handles 20,000 support tickets on their own. So that's a way to start scaling, getting your customers to do your job for you. It's not just in branded communities, it's also in existing social networks. So Philips taps thought leaders, healthcare innovators on LinkedIn. So go and fish where the fish are, go where your customers are, and then enable for them to talk to each other. You might have to sponsor, work, or have a community manager involved to help lead that discussion with your customers. Another example of tapping into your customer base, similar to TomTom, is Hewlett-Packard. And they say that 20% of their customers manage their customer care efforts across 7 languages. 33 million customers are served through their online forums. So they're getting this at scale. There's a lot of things needed for a community. It's not something you can just turn on. A full launch program and resources, dedicated headcount, content planning, management. There's a lot of things that go into this. It's a whole art and science among itself. Now, once you've done that, you'll naturally find that advocates start to emerge inside of your communities. Now, advocates are a special breed. Not every customer might be an advocate, but advocates are evangelists for you and your organization and go out and become like your marketing, your sales, your product innovation, in addition to customer care and support. Let me share one example. The largest retailer in the United States is Walmart. Love them or hate them, they're well known. And in the social media space, they actually had quite a few flops. A few of their efforts didn't work. They were basically trying to have an authentic conversation, but sometimes it didn't come across well. Or they were trying to tell the world about who they were, but the world didn't want to hear from them. So they finally realized that the market wanted to hear from their customers. And when we interviewed John, who is running this program called the Walmart Moms Program, they put their customers in front as their customers. Net sentiment for Walmart is pretty low. The company's not loved. So instead, they put their customers as that front and center voice. So Walmart Moms and now Dads has been running for a number of years, and they built a place on their .com website, and they allow customers to actually talk about whatever they want. They can blog about their experiences as moms or dads. Now, the interesting thing is, they say they can blog about anything. And the interesting thing is, they ended up blogging about their arch nemesis Target more than they blogged about Walmart. Now, why would you ever allow that to happen? Well, think about Google. We live in a Google world, right? If you're looking for Target moms, and you find these blog posts from moms, but you end up on the Walmart site, it's a very powerful, low-cost way to get in front of Target moms. Now, they had one rule that they told me. They said, Jeremiah, we allow moms to say, and dads, whatever they wanted to. But if they're going to say something bad about Walmart, our agreement is we will have a phone discussion or face-to-face discussion first, so we can understand each other's point of view, and then you're free to publish. So that was the only agreement. Obviously, the other FTC and some legal binding contracts as well. But when it came to the relationship, they wanted to have that open dialogue. EssayP has a fantastic advocate program called the Mentors. Have you heard of this program? There's actually different tiers. And the EssayP Mentors are the experts that really know the technologies, and they're customers or partners. And the goal is to get them to do the evangelism, write white papers, support customers in the community, and to innovate products. In fact, they're treated as royalty and VIP. If you become an EssayP mentor, you list on your business card you're a mentor. You have a special LinkedIn page that you can add and affix to your title. And at the conferences, you have your own special row. You're treated like industry analysts and VIPs. So being a mentor is an honor and a pinnacle of one's career as an EssayP professional. And they treat them like these, and these are now advocates to help them evolve. So this last one, we've talked about internal things, getting your company to scale, getting the right tools, community, and then outward evangelism with advocates is where you need to now integrate social. The term social will go away. Social business will just become business. Digital comes to the forefront. In fact, my title, there's no social in my actual title. It's actually customer strategy. So any technology that customers adopt, I'm going to go do research on it. So we always want to go in our careers to follow and be in front of customers, and that's important. Customer strategy, digital strategy, that's where we need to play. But right now, 2013, in the next few years to come, social is still very disruptive to our organizations. So using that moniker now is helpful to move the ball forward. So I wanted to share two examples of integration that we're seeing. The first one is on the website. How many of you have integrated social sign-on your own .coms? Anybody? Okay, KLM has, a couple folks up front. Social sign-on is when you have Facebook Connect or Twitter Connect, eventually Google and LinkedIn Connect. And it means is when you click that button, for the very first time, even if you're visiting that site for the first time, the content will render based upon your social profiles and ideas. The upside is you can have a very contextualized experience. Like this one here, TripAdvisor. So you can go to a different city that you're looking at, visiting New York, and using Facebook Connect, it'll serve up recommendations and references of your actual friends or people like you that have visited places and make it easy to find. How many pages are in your .com? Any ideas? 100 pages? 1,000? 10,000? 100,000 pages? What if you could help a first-time customer sort that information by using social sign-on? So we're starting to see that right away. Integration on .com. It's a real practical way to move forward. Now, the downside obviously is, and I understand every country and region is different, is the concerns about privacy. So making sure that we have a contract with our customers so we know how we're going to use their information, make it very clear and always follow the law that we live in to make sure that we use these tools right. The second way we're seeing integration with social today is what we call converged media. Has anybody heard that term before? Converged media? Just a few hands. Great, I'm happy to share. About 10 hands. Converged media is the integration of paid, owned, and earned. Paid is advertisements and sponsorships. Owned content is the content that we create as companies and organizations. And earned content is the actual content that the crowd and our customers are saying. So, what is Facebook? Paid, owned, and earned. Love to hear. Earned? All of them. She's right. The answer is yes. It's paid, owned, and earned. It's all a combination. Altimeter's theory, our vision, our statement, our stance for the future is that in the future, all media are converged media. All media will have paid, owned, and earned inside of it. And it will be difficult to tell and pull out the differences. We're already starting to see IAB ads have social components. We're already starting to see websites have customer voices threaded and embedded inside of them. It's hard to tell the difference between these types of contents as we're all becoming one communication world. The future is all media will be converged media. So inside of that Venn diagram, the orange part is very small. But in the future, these circles will continue to overlap tighter and tighter and tighter until it comes together. Converged media will be one form of media. So thank you for allowing me to share these 6 points. Just to recap them. One is get into a scalable formation now. We saw that hub and spoke and dandelion are scalable models. But the only way you do that is to enable your business units, deploy a center of excellence, teach them to do it on their own. 3, take inventory and management and measure those 178 social media accounts. Use the right tools and inventories and systems. Number 4, tap into your customers to help you with customer care, to answer questions. Number 5, turn your customers into your workforce and tap into your customer advocates. And then lastly, integrate on your website and all of your media now integrate social into all these places. And the goal here is for us to achieve escape velocity by building a scalable social business program. So that was the end of the remarks I had that Christian asked me to present. But yesterday over drinks, he wanted me to talk about some of the new trends that we're seeing. And I just wanted to share a quick glimpse of a big disruption we're seeing in social. And it's about to hit. In fact, is anybody going to Le Web in London in June? So the theme of Le Web is the sharing economy. And Loic does a great job of pointing out what are the next trends in the industry. My next report is called The Collaborative Economy. So social business started out in marketing, went to customer support, then it's hitting sales, product innovation, and then supply chain. So what comes next? We're seeing that social is going to impact our business models so much that we actually have to think about what's going to happen afterwards. So I'd love to see, how many of you use the shared bikes provided by the city? Anybody here? By Copenhagen? One hand? But you don't live here. So nobody uses the shared bikes? What's that?
We have our own.
You have your own private ones. What's wrong with the city bikes? They're for tourists? So Barclays Card in London sponsored City Bike Share, that program. Has anybody heard of Airbnb, where you can rent out okay, lots of folks. How about Lyft, where your own car can become a taxi? That's taking off in San Francisco. Or TaskRabbit. If you have idle time and want to help out somebody else, you can be hired as an office assistant or a handyman or even run errands for people. The sharing economy is taking off. I have a database of 200 startups. And when I parsed through the data, I found that these startups had been funded by venture capitalists over $2 billion US. That's a lot of money. In fact, about 35% of them had been funded, and they've been funded $28 million on average. That's incredibly high. So it means this trend's not going away. In fact, the dynamics that are forcing this trend are idle resources. So anybody who has a car, anybody here own a car but it's sitting in a garage? I know it's very expensive. If you own a car that's sitting somewhere right now and it's not generating revenue for you, you're missing out because you could be actually lending it and lending it to folks to use right now and recouping your costs. Or you have a vacation home, same thing. Empty office space, same thing. Next is we understand that we're starting to think more as a global society, a collaborative society, thinking about sustainability. Population is increasing. When I was born, it was 5 billion, and we're only increasing the amount of people on this planet, but resources relatively are staying the same. So why own all of these individual things when we can share amongst themselves? By the way, I'm preaching to the wrong community, I know. And social technologies are the ones that are powering this. So 3 examples that we see, and I think these industries are representative here in this room. There's opportunities and threats for, let's say, with tourism. We're seeing new forms of micro-tourism emerge where individuals, citizens, can take people on tours or identify the best restaurants, and they can bypass tourism agencies and help tourists like myself find the right way around. Airbnb allows anybody to turn their actual spare bedroom into like a hotel. Amsterdam said, no, we will not allow this. Airbnb said, that's fine. We understand that you don't want us to sell unlicensed hotel rooms. Well, we'll still offer the rooms, but tips are accepted. So they went around that. It's unstoppable. The next one is shipping and transportation. If you're traveling with a young infant, you can find somebody else on the plane called Sky Nanny to help you. There's a really radical one called Boston, Boston Wing Woman. And you can hire, do you know the term wing woman, wingman? Oh, you do. Some people said no. So you can hire somebody that's very social to help you find people that you want to meet for dating or for business. Idle resources. Same thing for shipping, TaskRabbit, Zipcar, Relay Ride, these are all ways to tap into transportation. But even regulated, like financials being impacted, peer-to-peer lending, microfinance, and even this radical Bitcoin, which we're not quite sure whether it's going to take off or not. So this sharing economy is absolutely happening. And the report's not going to publish for about a month, but I wanted to share that we see 5 opportunities for organizations. So this is all forward-looking stuff, and this is not to be considered our official research report. I'm just cluing you in on the very early thinking that we're starting to aggregate from the market. And we see that organizations have 5 options. The first one is to ignore it and hope it goes away. We do not believe that this trend will go away. Now, why should companies care? Let's imagine we're a hotel, Hyatt, Hilton, Marriott. It means that we are starting to be disrupted as people stay in each other's homes. We're losing revenue. Rachel Botsman, one of the thought leaders of this space, points out in her speeches on TED that the average electric drill, the hand drill, is only used 12 minutes per life. So why own it? So whoever sells hardware is going to be disrupted if a community buys one drill and they share it amongst each other. The second option is for companies to acquire these startups. So Zipcar was a famous car lending company that was acquired by the rental company Avis. So we saw that first one. The third option is tap into your customers, but allow and rent the products yourselves. Can you imagine the largest retailers actually renting or lending products instead of selling them? Imagine your own company. Could you rent or lend your services or products? The fourth option, and Walmart is considering this, is building in a marketplace to allow your customers to resell their products for them. In fact, Walmart, the largest retailer in the United States, is considering, there's a lot of news out right now, they are considering to allow their customers to deliver products from the store to each other's homes at a fee. And this starts to fight Amazon. Can you tap into your customers to build a community to allow them to buy and sell your products after you sold it to them? Can you build a marketplace on your website of used products that you sell? Even fashion retailers will be impacted by this. Rent the Runway is a startup that allows you to rent fashionable items and return them after a period of time. And last one is, and this one's radical, I'm not quite sure what we do here. I'm still thinking and doing the research, is gifting products or paying it forward or using virtual currency or maybe your cloud score. So these are the 5 scenarios that we're seeing in this radical piece. So I wanted to share with you today, in closing, social business as we see it now is just starting in our companies. And soon, over the next few years, social will start to impact our very business model. And the way we work with our customers is going to matter more after we sell, but we have to care about our customers after, and we have to care about our customers after that point of purchase. And this is called the consumption chain, which happens after the supply chain. Thank you so much. I hope that this was helpful and that you achieve escape velocity. Thank you so much.